Reddit, at what moment did you realize you were dating an idiot? Every time I went to her house, there were small brown melted V shapes in the carpet. I always wondered what they were. Then one day, I went over one time and saw her hair straightener lying on the carpet. She left it on all the time and would just go to work. Like, how have you not burned your apartment complex down yet? We were having dinner when I mentioned I couldn't eat cheese because I'm lactose intolerant. He asked how I could eat eggs. I told him that lactose was found in dairy, which comes from cows. He vehemently rejected my explanation that eggs did not come from cows and were not dairy, and wouldn't believe me until he googled it for himself. He looked out the car window to check his parking job, then closed it on his own head. He didn't know pickles don't grow out of the ground as pickles. After explaining the whole pickled cucumber situation, he actually didn't believe me at first. We're married, and he's never going to live it down. My girlfriend thinks I made up the USSR. When I had to explain that you spray mosquito repellent on yourself, not in the air at the mosquitoes, for the third time. It's not like wasp spray. Stop, I'm wasting it. She thought the movie The Martian was not only a true story but that Matt Damon was actually on Mars. When she told me that the wind comes from trees, you know, because they wave around, and that pushes the air around. Aching wind. No. She was not joking. Edit. I'm so pleased that my far and away top rated comment of all time is about how stupid my ex-wife is. Screw that bitch. When he asked me why my cats haven't started hibernating yet, when he blamed the loan company, I said I had $20,000 in student loan debt. He said he had something like $20,000. He then changed his answer to $40,000. Then thought about it and didn't know. I pressured him to actually figure it out. Turns out, he owed $120,000 in student loans. He blamed the loan company for not telling him how much he was taking out. He blamed them for making him pay it all back. I pointed out that the information was on the forms he signed every year. He said that it was unrealistic for them to make him read all of that information. My favorite part is that his degree is in communication. I dated a girl that did not know the names or values of any coins. She was in her mid-20s. She thought Al-Qaeda's a country. She actually expressed interest in visiting it someday. I hear East Taliban is lovely this time of year. He tried to tell me that an oxymoron was a cleaning solution. Billy Mays here with oxymoron. Do you have lots of freezer burn from soaking your jumbo shrimp with icy hot? Stop loosely sealing them with paper towels and buy some of this goddamn oxymoron. This is like a minor miracle for your bittersweet shrimps. You can even put some oxymoron on your sad smile, and it'll turn your pretty ugly face into an awful good one. Good grief. He was surprised in disbelief that I knew how to make a grilled cheese. We were 25/26 at the time. He didn't know why his credit card balance kept increasing even after he made payments, and wouldn't accept that it was because he was spending more than he was paying. My buddy dated a girl who thought that the actors in 300 actually were killed in the battle scenes. Years ago dated a guy who was a little vain to say the least. One day while playing cards I asked him to put on his mirrored aviator sunglasses because I found him so attractive when he wore them. Needless to say I won every hand. That was 35 years ago and my mother still laughs at what an idiot he was. I had this one ex-boyfriend who would play Russian music fairly loud in the car. One day I asked him why and with a straight face he said it's to scare away the black people. He was right. We're terrified of it. We also never played Tetris. He told me the clit was in a different place on every woman and then never found mine in 6 months. Edit. I did help him find it regularly. He easily lost it and never found it on his own. I stayed because we had a lot of fun and I don't consider bad head to be a deal breaker. He was 48 at the time. He probably pulls up to the gas pump on the wrong side every time too. Comma. They moved it again. I was riding the bus to school with my then girlfriend in 12th grade. I made some reference about us living on the west coast. She then began to correct me and say we live on the east coast. This argument continued for 15 minutes on the bus and people looked at her like she was crazy. It wasn't till later she found out we live on the west coast. BTW, we lived in a California at the time. I remember when I lived inside a California once. When he didn't know if we were on the east coast or the west coast. It can get confusing with Florida. He took me out to my favorite restaurant. A chic little upscale cafe. For dinner on Valentine's Day and made fun of the way I pronounced filet. He tried to get the waiter on his side. Can you believe this? Hahaha. She wants the filet I. Then he leans upwards, conspiratorially. She means the fillet. Obviously. Hahaha. Then he wouldn't shut up about it. I was like, it's French. The et sound is pronounced A, but he wasn't having it. Kept going on and on about how stupid I must be until he dropped me off at home. I told him we were done the next day. My ex-boyfriend saw a very large lady wearing double denim. Then turned to me and said, wow. How many cows died for her outfit? At first I laughed, then realized he wasn't really joking, and after probing, genuinely believed that denim came from cows. It was the beginning of the end, really. When I had to sit her down and explain step by step why inviting your boyfriend and the guy you're cheating on him with to the same dance was a bad idea. He thought procrastination meant overthinking. Disillusioned meant one didn't have enough light to see. Disenchanted meant one had stopped chanting. The list goes on and on. The funniest part is he couldn't understand why we had so much miscommunication. Edit. I just sent him a text using the word assumption. I wonder if he is going to think I'm suggesting an L. Isn't miscommunication when you miss a phone call? Not me. But a best friend in high school. Hanging out with her. Her BF and my BF. We were having a conversation on who the richest people in the world were. He says I know who the richest guy in the world was. Johnny Appleseed. Full stop. We all laugh. He continues, yeah, because he invented oxygen. Crickets, unfazed by all our blank stares and silence, he proceeds to say because Johnny Appleseed invented trees. And trees make oxygen. He was 100% serious. She didn't know how a boner worked. Not saying she was bad in bed. She literally thought that a penis would fill with semen sperm when it was erect. Not blood. This is actually hilarious. If that were the case. When gas prices were really high, she forwarded me this email about how if everyone didn't buy gas on a certain day of the week, it would force oil companies to lower their gas prices and increase production for some like that. I tried explaining to her it would literally make no difference because on the following day everyone would buy slightly more gas and the net gas usage would remain the same. She wasn't having it. When he told me he believed some kind of Illuminati Freemason conspiracy. I can't remember which. He also skipped so many school days in favor of sleeping at home that he didn't graduate. Which is exactly what I told him would happen. He wasn't exactly book stupid, if that's even a thing, but the guy had very little common sense. He thought that the pull-out method was foolproof. When he thought the moonlight shining down on the water through a hole in the clouds was the sun coming up through the ocean. He thought the tendon between my inner thigh and my vulva was my clit. That's stupid. Everyone knows that the tendon is between the clit and the thigh is called the vuvuzela. He asked me to proofread an essay he had written on Lenin. Half the essay was about Lenin. My ex was selling a computer on Craigslist and almost got caught in one of those scams where they send you a check for a much larger amount and have you cash it and send some of the money back to them. He went as far as to get the check mailed to him and asked me to take him to the bank. I insisted that it's a scam and even looked it up online to show him other examples. He still insisted on going to the bank. When we get there I have him tell the teller the story as to how he obtained this check. Of course the guy says it's a scam. But even then, he still doubted everyone, and I know to this day he still regrets not cashing that check. Picture this. High school 1980-ish. Boyfriend and I went to see Friday the 13th movie and I would hide my eyes when the scary music started. Turns out I am not a fan of horror for sake of blood. After the movie my boyfriend was dead at me and accused me of seeing the movie before. He thought that was why I knew something scary was coming up. It couldn't have been the formula scary music. Lol. That moment I decided to go to college and not marry my high school sweetheart. He told me he ate a pine cone once because he was dead too. I love that man more than anything. You know. You can use this. I dare you to fix a supper. I dare you to vacuum. I dare you to do the dishes. I dare you to build a time machine. Go back in time. And kill Hitler. He thought that the trend of girls wearing a different color nail polish on their ring finger than the rest of their fingers meant that the girl liked an L. He saw it in a PRN and vehemently argued that it was true. Not dating so much as eyeing, but we ended up in a huge argument about whether or not the stars were real. He hit me with lines like, I don't think space is real, I think it's a conspiracy. Man was he hot. But so dumb. I had an ex that became an ex after she explained to me how two gay men, with no prior ST, would both get AIDS after having sex with each other. He thought women peed out of their clits. Argued for half an hour until he finally googled it. He was 24. I was set up for this by my best friend. Context. I am male. Best friend is female. BF manages to somehow casually drop that women pee from their clit. I say that doesn't seem right. Her argument. It's the anatomical equivalent to the penis head. Also I have one and you don't. That seemed reasonable to me. 2 weeks later this fact somehow comes up in conversation with my girlfriend. I have never seen her be more disappointed in my ignorance. Best friend later laughs at my gullibility. We had an incident where the condom broke and I right away suggest we go buy a Plan B pill. He immediately says let me ask my boss first. He knows a lot about women's bodies. Yes. A 32-year-old single male manager of Home Depot knows more about my own reproduction system than I do. Dumped him a month later. I was a vegetarian when we were dating. Pretty early on he asked if I ate fish. I said no. I don't eat any animals. To which he replied, a fish isn't an animal. It's a mammal. I didn't even know what to say. I just walked out of the room. He said I'm as strong as an oxen. I said do you mean ox? Oxen is plural. He said nope. Different animal. He thought that chocolate truffles were mushrooms covered in chocolate. He thought all waffles were made of potatoes. Therefore any sweet toppings on a waffle were revolting. He spelled performance as performance consistently, including on job applications. And when I corrected him, he wouldn't speak to me for the rest of the day. Normal stuff. Really. I'm sure we'd have worked out fine if he wasn't a monumental dick as well. Edit. To clarify, all waffles. I am aware of the potato variety, and they are delicious. When he nodded and said yes as the moving van rental guy explained the height of the truck and what clearance was needed. Then half an hour later, he drove it into the parking garage at our apartment complex and ran it into a low beam, smashing the top of the truck. Then he claimed he hadn't been warned about low clearances and I was making up, imagining the entire prior conversation. Then he drove said moving truck at 80 miles per hour on a speed-trapped highway. Trooper ticketed him. Said he wasn't ticketing me because I really had no choice but to try to keep up with that idiot. The relationship didn't last a whole lot longer. On our first date we went out for supper. We decided on one place, but then he encouraged me to go to a different restaurant when he picked me up. We got there and an older woman sitting 2 tables from us kept looking over. It was weird. When I pointed her out the first time, he dismissed it. But after she started making a racket, clanging her dishes and cutlery against her table. He couldn't ignore it. He finally told me he knew her. It was his mother. Turns out she wanted to check me out, and that's why we didn't go to the place we had originally decided on. I didn't accept a second date. It was my first year in college. I taught him how to use a screwdriver. It takes a while for my to get her brain working, so this morning she woke me up in a panic. What time is it? My phone and clock have somehow unsynced. I'm going to be late. 6:45. Okay. Good. I can't believe this. My phone says 6:45 but my clock says 6:45. What? We went to Toronto to visit a friend and to visit a novelty ID shop there to get fake IDs we could use. She screwed up a fake birthday making herself 20 not 21. So she had to sit on a useless fake ID for a year until her next birthday. When she told me she kissed some other guy because he had never kissed a girl before and wanted her to be his first. You know, I've never had a blowjob from a girl before. Either. It would mean a lot to me if you were my first. She said dinosaurs were made up and never existed. X thought drinking through a straw made him look gay. Reminds me of a guy I knew in college who relentlessly made fun of his two buddies when they shared an umbrella during a rainstorm. Apparently this makes them gay. When she expressed how spooky it was going to be when Halloween fell on Friday the 13th. I let the incredibly tight tattoo slide, not just subject matter, but execution. Because he had gotten them when he was on cocaine and had been sober for years before I met him. I shouldn't have. He confirmed he was a complete moron when he pulled the trigger on his pistol to show me it wasn't loaded. I'm just here to see if my wife posts. When she bought a $400 piece of art using a maxed out credit card with a balance of $6,500. She was a minimum wage employee. When I was 19 I briefly dated a guy who wanted to get married and talked about it early on. So it felt very serious. One day we met up to study together and he made a comment about how disgusting he found gay people to be, and it really bothered me. I didn't know what I say, so I sat quietly for a long time as he talked and a million things went through my mind. He started to sense that I was upset, so he leaned in and quietly asked me if I was one of those black girls who pretends to be nice and sweet at first but is actually just angry and mad a lot. Being the type of person I am was. I said no and he said good and went to class. I stopped answering his phone calls, texts and spoke to him only one time after that. He was a special kind of idiot. My father found out he married an idiot when my mom casually talked about the moon changing shapes every night. I once had a brief thing with a guy in high school who was convinced that slugs were born when enough dust and dirt had clustered together for a long enough amount of time. I still thought he was dreamy. An ex told me that. Don't know if this counts. But I told her my cousin died and she replied, "Do you like my nails?" When he said my UT was caused by walking around the house in bare feet. Bacteria could travel through my feet and into my bloodstream and infect my bladder. This guy was a healthcare assistant in a hospital. A. He asked me why I watched the news. Too boring. B. He was extremely proud of never actually reading a book all the way through. C. He accused me of playing him when I broke up with him after 3 months. When I was trying to teach her how to drive, she hops into the driver's seat and immediately starts driving down the road on the wrong side of the road, insisting that I was wrong. She was 17 at the time. I reached over and turned the ignition off, pulled the keys out and jerked the emergency brake. I screamed, "Get the hell out of my car." It took 2 days and several of her friends to convince her that she was wrong. I'm not kidding. Dead serious. This was 31 years ago. My wife, nosy person that she is, looked her up on Facebook. She has had a terrible life. He listened to Alex Jones. Used crystals to heal himself and predict the future, never mind when he was wrong. Thought the CIA snuck our apartment when we weren't home. Couldn't hold down a telephone hotline job for more than 6 months. Then again, I was stupid for staying in that relationship as long as I did. My first boyfriend broke up with me because I refused to believe that he was a secret dormant superhero who would one day be called upon by the government to save the world from some unnamed terrorists. He tried to lie to our marriage counselor. Like a blatant lie. First off, counselors are trained to pick up on these things. She and he, there were two, did not believe him for a second. But second of all, why would you lie to a marriage counselor? Isn't the whole point that you're paying good money to supposedly to hash out? WTF point is it to tell lies? On top of it, the counselors didn't believe him and told me to basically run for my own life. Should have listened. Holy. I should have listened. He was so dumb he thought he was going to outsmart his counselor into outsmarting his wife or something. I had suspicions in the past, but that was the moment I realized beyond a shadow of a doubt that I was married to an idiot. Told her I was excited to see a movie coming out soon. Lord of the Rings. She told me that it was her favorite book. How likely is it to find a 9/10 who is into books? Went to the theater. You know how the movie begins? Telling the story about the rings and all. Sometime around Rivendell she turns to me and asks when the kids get to the island. Asks me when does the plane crash. She sat through around an hour of Gandalf, Gollum and hobbits before asking when does Lord of the Rings become Lord of the Flies. I read this out loud and my wife says 5 years ago. Sucks to be that guy. When my girlfriend legitimately thought that Benjamin Franklin invented cheese. Not me, but a friend of mine was dating this girl, and one day when they were just hanging out, she turns to him and asks, so were dinosaurs real or were they just made up for the kids? When she wouldn't talk to me for 2 days because of things I did to her in her dreams. He thought that women went blind when they got their period. He was 27. My mother was driving home one day in really bad rain. Suddenly, the road she was on completely flooded and her car was basically submerged. She sent me a picture of the car once the rain went away and I put it on Facebook. The guy I was dating at the time comment on the picture saying, "Did your mom survive? X, we broke up shortly afterwards." Edit. This happened years before Covfifgate. So no. He wasn't making a pun. My girlfriend thought Alaska was an island because on maps of the United States it's always sitting in its own boxed off section in the corner, because it is connected to Canada, not the US, and she thought it was like Hawaii. I was 18. He was 17. He called me from jail. Said he had been arrested for drug possession. I did not want to be associated with anything illegal and he knew I was very much of a good girl, so to speak. Me. Drug possession. What are you doing with drugs? Him. I was holding them for his 15-year-old brother. Right square bracket. Me. You were holding them? You really expect me to believe that? Him. Yes. I thought you'd be proud of me. I realized he was an idiot when it became clear he thought I was an idiot.